Welcome to the leading mothering and childcare conversation for the 2020 M&L Virtual Conference. We're so pleased that you could join us to listen today. My name is Deetra Walsh. I'm the Director of Advocacy and Communications with M&L, and I'm going to be the host and moderator for this discussion. I'm thrilled, and we are so happy to have three extraordinary guests with us here today: Gillian Pearson, Councillor Maggie Burton, and Mayor Chalsie Cook-Marche. Thank you all for taking the time out of your busy schedules to talk with me and with us. And before we begin this conversation, I'd like to introduce you to those listening in. Gillian Pearson is a working mom of two young boys with a passion for policy and advocacy. She has a bachelor's degree in political science and English and is currently pursuing a Master of Arts in Political Science at Memorial University, where she is also a member of the Gender and Politics Research Lab. She works in federal public service and serves on the board of a local family resource center, as well as other various committees. She's the founder of the advocacy group Parents for Affordable Childcare, NL, and has recently taken on the position of co-chair with the NL chapter of Equal Voice. In her spare time, she likes to try and eat and sleep where possible. Welcome, Gillian. Maggie Burton is perhaps best described as always up to something. She is a St. John's City Councilor, musician, poet, Suzuki violin teacher, and mom. She has a Bachelor of Music degree from Memorial University, where she specialized in violin and music history. And she grew up in Brigus and currently calls downtown St. John's home, where she is raising her two children, Jack and Ursula. First elected in 2017, her council portfolio currently includes planning and development, heritage, youth, animal care, and audit. She co-chairs the St. John's Food Policy Council, volunteers for a number of different community projects as they arise, and serves on several local education and environmental nonprofit boards. And since joining council, Maggie has been a strong advocate for transit, walkability, and planning healthier communities. She can usually be found arguing for climate, social, and economic justice on Twitter. Welcome, Maggie. Chalsie Cook-Marche is the mayor of Port West, Agatuna Felix Cove on the west coast of the island. She's held this position for the past 3 years, and she's been on council for 7. Her first child was born shortly after she joined council in 2013, and she has since had another. Over the years, her children have sat at many council meetings and have made many public appearances. They are now 3 and 4. Chalsie has a background in the tourism sector and now works fishing with her husband. And when she's not doing council work, she's on the land with her family. She comes to this conversation because she recognizes the importance of childcare in the municipal sector. Welcome, Chalsie, and welcome to all of you. I want to start our conversation on the subject of mothering during a pandemic, because for the past 7 months, that's where we've all been, right? And I had to look at my calendar this morning and say, yes, it's been 7 months of this and we're still here. So a question for all of you. I know you all have small children at home, and we've talked about that. Tell me, what has it been like working, mothering, and leading during a pandemic? Who'd like to start? Maggie, how about yourself?
Okay. Yeah, so my experience, I think it's been pretty typical of many people, trying to sit through meetings all day on Zoom while, my kids are coming in and out of the room with various complaints and concerns and requests for my attention, obviously. So it's been, on one hand, it's been really hard to manage all of those, I guess, the switching in between lots of different hats. So a lot of the projects that I've been involved on have continued through the pandemic, and there was barely a breather as we all adjusted. So my meeting schedule is really intense. I got because I never get to be home with them on an extended period of time. I don't get to put them to bed every night. I do my best, but I'm just not usually here. So I've actually really enjoyed the digital meeting culture. It's allowed me to be here to cook lunch for them and give them a bath and tuck them in at night while still sometimes being on the phone. So it's been really interesting to have a lot of ups and downs. Definitely cried a lot in the spring. I was really overwhelmed, and we got into the pandemic routines of playing Animal Crossing together on the Switch, or doing a lot of board games, playing outside as much as we could, and just sort of returning to some um, things I remember from my own childhood. So I had a stay-at-home mom full time, and this sort of felt like a gift. Honestly, this
Mm.
period of time, although it was also super overwhelming. So I don't know how to square those two feelings, but they're both very real.
Mm. Yeah. Chalsie, what about yourself?
Yeah. Hi. Well, the first month of the pandemic was a bit different for us, as we are a commercial fishing family, and for the first month, the commercial season was closed down, and so it was stressful, not knowing if we were going to get on the water or anything. So it was on that regards, but the four of us, we spent a lot of time together as a family. We did a lot of stuff together. We were out in the woods, and we were outside and inside, and doing a lot of baking inside and spending time together. Um, then when the fishing season opened, we chose to send our kids to daycare
Mm.
because we were considered essential workers. So the daycares were open for essential workers. So what would happen is I'd go on the water at 5 a.m. and my sister-in-law would come get the kids and take them to the daycare and pick them up at night. And then I'd come home and we'd have supper and do bedtime and stuff and get up and fish the next morning. So I had like most people had their kids home with them. I had the difference of sending my kids to a daycare in this time. And I must say, the daycare that I sent my kids to, I was really well pleased with the level of care that they had given them. The kids weren't they weren't frightened over what was going on. Like they taught them a lot of good techniques and stuff. At the beginning, I was watching the news a lot, and I realized that I had turned off because my now 4-year-old, she was getting a little bit nervous about the virus. But we had a good care during the pandemic through daycare. But yeah, so basically we fished throughout the lockdown. So it was a bit different than when, like, my friend, she was home the whole time with her kids. So
Right. Jill, what about yourself? What's it been like during the pandemic for you?
it was
Oh.
Bit of a transition where they weren't set up to send people to work from home quickly, so we were all rotating through the office. So I was working 2 days one week from the office, 3 days the next, and then I moved entirely from to home. But like Maggie, I kind of felt like it was a challenge but also a blessing at the same time. I'm usually not home a lot either. I worked completely outside of the home and I had a lot of other commitments. So the first month, my children followed me around the house like I was the Pied Piper because they were so not used to me being home so much. And they were usually gone to daycare before that. So my youngest, who was 18 months at the time, first when all the closures happened, he didn't want to leave my side because he thought, well, mom is home. I don't know how long this is going to last. So I'm going to try and stick with her as much as possible. So I knew he could sense something different was going on. And so amongst all of the chaos, I'm trying to find a new normal, but the kids are, ecstatic that mom is home. So that was kind of funny to navigate through. And as the time went on, we had no sense of time here, and bedtime went out the window. The evening was when I usually got things done. We were going to bed increasingly late because there was no reason to get them up early and out the door in the morning. So I lost a lot of time in the evenings when I usually worked on things, which I would try and get done throughout the day. And like most people, it got pretty normalized pretty quickly about having children running around in the background, or people just kind of setting up whenever they could. But I really enjoyed being able to see the kids more and being able to work remotely. While it's certainly not the same, it opened up a lot more availability for myself, because I didn't have to waste all that time trying to make sure. It was a strange time for them, but I think that we got through it, and there was good and bad.
Sounds like there's been quite a few different experiences, some positives, some negatives, right? And certainly that even now, I think as we all four of us reflect on it, although this is about you folks, it's things have changed over time, and what it was like at the beginning versus what it's like now is certainly it's a sort of a stretch of perspective. So I want to talk now to leading mothering and childcare more broadly, and I want to turn it to the municipal sector, because it sounds like you've had lots of things to juggle and manage over the course of the pandemic, but in the middle of this, you've been leading as well in various ways. We heard throughout the pandemic about the importance of having childcare, be it school, be it summer programming. That was something we talked a lot about from a municipal lens. And in some places, summer programs couldn't be offered. And we know how important they are to parents, or indeed daycare, and the importance of these sort of institutional structures of care for women. And we know that women and families with small children in particular, they need access to childcare to participate in community and working life. Before we turn to the municipal lens, and I'll turn to you, Maggie and Chalsie, in a second, but Jill, I wonder if you could set the stage a little bit for us more generally on the importance of childcare and the situation in this province, and tell us a little bit about your advocacy work and why it's important.
So in terms of accessibility to childcare in the province, it can really range on region. So, the availability of childcare in rural Newfoundland versus Labrador versus Metro is very different. So I'm sure parents and women in particular had a lot of different experiences based on where they were and if there was any childcare available at all. But the availability of childcare, it's really hard to disentangle that from the conversation about getting more women involved in leadership, especially young women who have young families. Because if we want to support the goal of getting more women involved, then we have to create the conditions that make that possible. We can't just make that a goal and walk away from it. So when there is more quality and affordable childcare available, and these systems, make that completely accessible to people, then people can, or women, they can consider opportunities that are more viable. So my advocacy, it deals with many aspects of this, affordability, accessibility, quality. But when we are putting this into the context of, women in leadership in the municipal sense, then if we want more women to become involved, then we really have to strengthen that system. That is a major part of the piece of the puzzle if we want to get more women and young women involved in leadership. And right now the system is under-sourced. It's very patchwork, and it's not serving the needs of women all over Newfoundland. And there's a lot of issues there that need to be addressed.
That's an excellent segue to talk to Maggie and Chalsie about their experiences. And, we all know we're not at gender parity either at the municipal, provincial, or the federal level. And currently, municipal councils are made up of approximately 30% women, and far fewer of our mayors are women. And Chalsie, you are our female mayor on this panel today. Our councillors are also, many of them, on the older end of the age spectrum, particularly in rural areas. So we don't see, for the most part, a lot of young women with small children at council tables. So for Chalsie and Maggie, I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about your experiences entering into and being municipal leaders while also raising small children. And, what have been barriers for you as it relates to that, and how have you dealt with them? Chalsie, do you want to start?
Okay. I went on council before I had my first. I was on council for a few years before I got pregnant, and I remember I took my first with me to a couple of town meetings when she was an infant, because I just couldn't find someone to watch my youngster for me. And when I had my second, it was a battle to find someone to watch the kids while I had to go to these meetings when they're, everyone's schedules is all over the place. Thankfully, the council that I serve in, because we are in a rural area, most of the people that serve with me, they're retired, or they have one of our councilors, she has a good work schedule. So we always meet on Fridays. So therefore I can put my kids in daycare and make the meetings. It just, we get invited to all these kind of conferences, and I've never been able to go because I couldn't find the care for the kids for 3 days, and I couldn't bring the kids. So I feel like this is like, if I need to go to these conferences, there should be childcare provided. Mm-hmm. And I feel like there should be care provided too, as well, when we attend meetings on behalf of our town. I can't expect my taxpayers to pay for my child care bill when we're trying to decide, where to put our limited budget too. Yeah. I don't know. But my kids, they've gone with me a lot of places, so they've been exposed to a lot of town things. And of course, since they're fans of Paw Patrol and they're at that toddler age, they think that I'm cool because I'm like Mayor Goodway.
You're cooler than Mayor Goodway.
Yeah.
She does have a pet chicken, but
we have ducks, so
I rest my case.
Maggie, does any of those things sort of resonate with you? What are your reflections on that question?
Totally. Yeah, it definitely resonates with me. It's difficult to attend all the, especially in the evenings, the public meetings. For example, like with my role as chair for planning and development portfolio, I've always tried to go to all the public meetings on, development applications and the like, and they're always at 7 p.m. on a Tuesday night or something. And, my kids start to get ready for bed around then. So early on, Deputy Mayor O'Leary gave me some advice to try to only take on 2 evenings of commitments a week, for example, which was really helpful. So I did try to do that for a while, but yeah, as I started out, I had less on the go, and quickly I became involved in a million things, and most of the meetings are in the nighttime. So that's probably my biggest complaint, is that there's no opportunity to attend for most of those meetings, and if I was absent at one, I would hear about it from my constituents. So I found the emails, like, why weren't you at that meeting last night, to be pretty hard to handle, because if I have a sick child, my kid was in the hospital with pneumonia for a couple of days, for example. I missed a bunch of things. So you can never really control your schedule to the full extent that you need to when you have small children. They're always sick. They're always, stuff comes up and life happens, and you just got to roll with it. And it's hard to manage the expectations of voters while still fulfilling your job. And I understand, I used to look at council, which of course in 2013 was all men. There were 11 men, and wonder why there were no women there. But I think we need to start asking the question, if there aren't women sitting around the table, why not? And maybe we need to change the way the table operates. So something like, for me, I made a deliberate effort to start to be at more tables and try to be at more places and talk about childcare, talk about women, talk about the things we care about, like snow clearing and transit and accessibility, and recreation. But like getting to FCM, for example, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, was a huge deal for us because it meant that my children's father had to spend, a week or 5 days with the kids while I was gone, and he found that really hard. But we always made that work because it was important to me for my career. But I feel as if I've sort of been like a bright star burning quickly. Like, I don't think I can keep this up. And that's been my dominant impression has been like, it's possible to do all the things, but it comes at a massive, massive cost. So, I went through separation. I have my whole life changed since I've been on council, and a big part of it is because of this job, for sure. So the hardest thing is probably the like being on call 24/7, getting the messages from angry people all the time, but hearing from your friends who are upset about things. I felt really cut off from my community for a while. Every winter I find people get really angry at us, and I stopped going to retreat a little bit into my cocoon until the snow melts and people are less upset. Because of course St. John's sidewalks, big deal. I live downtown. Everybody knows where to find me and what to say. So
Mhm.
yeah, if it was a little bit less stressful and there were more provisions for care in the off hours, I think it would have been a lot easier.
I think that, in terms of what needs to happen is a really good point, and reflecting upon evening participation and how as we all know, when things are happening in the evening, it isn't easy to get there if there's no one to take care of the children, especially if you have partners who are working away, and certainly many partners work away or are busy in the evening as well. So it is challenging. So how do we participate, and what are the solutions that are needed? And all of you have already alluded to some of these solutions, and I want to spend the last segment of our conversation really talking about that. We've heard about the provincial context. We've heard about, Jill's talked a little bit about conditions and solutions already. We've heard about the experience at the municipal level from a councillor and a mayor. So let's talk a little bit now about solutions. Jill, from your perspective, what are the conditions for these solutions to occur? Do you think we're in a place now where the conditions are right in the province for addressing the issue of childcare and the role of young children in our lives and making provisions for their care? It's important that we make these provisions for their care so we're not worried about them, but they also are treated respectfully as part of this equation. And so that we can lead, right? I'm thinking here of the $25 a day announcement that we just heard in the 2020 budget speech, the change in September to the House of Assembly standing orders to allow MHAs to bring infant children to the floor. Of course, that prompted by Minister Sarah Studley's pregnancy and her advocacy. So Jill, what are we in a place now where the conditions are good for more stuff?
I think we're in a place where we can leverage the pandemic to continue this conversation, because I think, nationally, the conversation is very focused on the ability of parents, and disproportionately women, to juggle the care of young children with other responsibilities. So we're probably going to see more funding, hopefully, from the federal government that is going to invest and bolster childcare systems across different provinces. So if we want to create the conditions where it's just as easy for young women to engage in municipal politics and leadership as their other counterparts. Then maybe we had to implement solutions that are focused on all of these problems that have kind of been blown wide open by COVID. So, we need to completely normalize the idea that we need to consult with a lot of women about what works best in terms of meetings and location of meetings. And it's not just enough to say that, we support women at home. Are you actually ensuring that, you aren't subconsciously putting any guilt or unrealistic expectations on these women? So make sure that they are part of the conversation in terms of scheduling and access. Maybe we need to normalize a fund with municipalities that provides compensation for women and parents if they have to access childcare outside of normal working hours. The daycare system, it functions in the traditional 9 to 5 work week. So if we are going to say that we want more women involved, but there are a variety of different reasons why they can't be as involved, then we have to make sure that they have, we're addressing those barriers. And it's hard to continue to afford care if you don't have a partner at home. Not everyone has a partner. And we also need to make sure we normalize, bringing our kids with us or having additional funding to bring children to conferences. It's a huge issue in academia as well. And I think part of the problem is that a lot of these rules and regulations were created by men who didn't need them.
Yeah. Maggie and Chalsie, how would you respond to that? I mean, given your experiences, what conditions and solutions are needed at the municipal level for women who are currently leading and ones who are thinking about getting in there? And Jill talked about a few of those. Interested in your comments on that.
Yeah, I have a laundry list of items that I think would be really useful to have. Excuse me. For example, the county, Kings County in Nova Scotia, they have a parental accommodation policy. A lot of work was done there, spearheaded by Deputy Mayor Emily Lutz, who had 2 small children while she was on council. They have a long policy with a list for elected officials that aims to build a family-friendly workplace through a variety of measures. So things like making flexible work arrangements for families at all stages, providing space for family care, including change stations, embracing parents bringing their infants and children to municipal council meetings, and the list goes on. They also have a policy where they reimburse parents for some childcare costs. So if you are a part-time counselor in most municipalities in Canada that are our size or smaller, so I'm talking about the city of St. John's, and I know like in rural Newfoundland a lot of these positions are completely voluntary without any compensation at all. So it's the policy landscape is quite different here in some cases for sure, but in a capital city like St. John's, if we're expected to work part-time and receive part-time compensation, we should maybe receive some compensation for part-time childcare expenses. So maybe that looks like providing a small expense form so that you can get 3 days a week of childcare. Maybe it looks like creating space at public meetings for people to bring their kids and have a childcare center at those. But whatever the decisions that are made, they have to be made in consultation with the childcare providers themselves who are going to be taking on this extra work perhaps, but also with the parents. And I think it's really important to have something as simple as an accommodation policy for elected officials on the books, because that signals to the community that if you're thinking about having a family, you will be welcome here. I feel like I've been really lucky at the city because everyone has little kids right now. Pretty much everyone around the council table has either grandchildren or children. And, when there was an issue with our private meetings, which happened at 3 o'clock, and we need to get our kids at 3 o'clock from the bus, they switched the meetings to 12 p.m. So little things like that. Like we've been really fortunate, I think, to have a mayor in Danny Breen who of remote voting software, so that if someone has to stay home with a sick kid, for example, they can still vote. So you're not losing out on your elected official will still be there for you to vote for something. So those are some things just right off the bat that I think would be really important, and making sure that it's a breastfeeding friendly, council chambers. When I took a picture of former Councillor Jameson and her baby Margaret at a council meeting, I snapped it, and then it went all over the province. Everyone saw a baby in the council chambers, and it was like really positive, and the reaction was really nice. So people, I think, are ready to see infants, and maybe slightly older babies, but it stops there. You're not supposed to have your kids with you. You're not supposed to have your toddlers with you. You're allowed to have an infant that's still breastfeeding with you. And fathers, I've never seen a father bring a child to a meeting before that's been a public meeting. I've seen fathers bring children to private meetings before, but not in public.
Mm.
So I think it would be great if men could also normalize the participation of children in those meetings. And like having children doesn't prevent me from doing my job, but sometimes having lack of appropriate childcare and support from my community, is that's the kind of thing that makes it hard.
Absolutely. Chalsie, I'm wondering your reflections on that, on the solutions that are needed based on your experiences on the West Coast.
Well, we live in a rural part of Newfoundland on the West Coast, and so it's a bit different. We all volunteer here, and so our municipal budget is quite limited. So we have to, I can't ask my council to pass a resolution to pay for my childcare when we're trying to see if we have enough money to pay for our water line project, or even get a set of snow tires for our municipal truck. But I've been to many meetings since I had my kids. Like we've had public meetings where other family came, and we used to play pass the baby with their kid and mine. And I brought my kids to meetings. The only thing is when they get older, you can't bring them in, and that's where the childcare discussion comes in. I can always scrounge up someone to watch my kids. But as for conferences and stuff, we used to send our deputy mayor to the AGMs for M&L, and because I couldn't make it, I had small children. And one guy, he said, well, where's your mayor? She should be here. She should be learning this stuff. And that hit me like, yeah, I want to be there, but I can't leave my kids for a week with my husband and all these family members, when I feel like I should be able to bring them with us. It's an important issue. Now I bring my kids when I do some town stuff, business and stuff like that, and we usually bribe them with seeing the fire truck and our town clerk. They absolutely love her. They think that keeps candy and coloring books and everything in the office for them, keep them quiet and stuff. So yeah, it's a balancing act for sure.
I think we've heard some really great suggestions for solutions, and there's some things happening in other jurisdictions that we could look to, and it sounds like there's even information to be shared between the larger community perspective of St. John's and maybe some of our smaller members. I'm also hearing that there's things maybe MNL can do as an organization to encourage women's participation at our larger events, and what we need to do around that, And last year we had a resolution passed about breastfeeding friendly communities, and that's important. So there's policy we can do, there's pieces around that to be put in place, and there's a question about funding, so there's a lot of places, I think, and I'm hearing that we need to go and actions we can take, and lots to take away from this conversation. We're now nearing the end here, and again, I appreciate your time to have this conversation. On some closing remarks, it's certainly been interesting to chat with you all. And as we wrap up, I'd like to provide you each with an opportunity for any additional points or closing comments. Anybody would like to start? Anybody feeling like you want to jump in right now? No, it's like in the classroom. I have to call on someone. Jill, any sort of closing comments from you?
I think a lot of, the discourse that we've seen emerge here is that we need to continue the conversation, and a lot of people around the table who might not necessarily have children do have to speak up and also normalize the idea that it's really important to take parents and the extra workload of women into consideration when we plan and make regulations. And if we really want to make leadership positions and participation in municipal democracy attractive to young women, then we have to, like Maggie said, maybe put that policy into something formal, whereby they know that this signals that workplace is accommodating, and that there will be mechanisms in place to make sure that those women don't feel, and parents as well, that they don't feel like they are, less than or able to be less productive than the other members. So we do need to build in the idea that childcare and the childcare conversation is a necessary piece to get more women at the table, because it's not enough to just say, we want to see more of you. Well, how do we get you there?
Absolutely. Thanks, Jill. Chalsie, anything closing that you'd like to say, or anything we haven't covered?
When I've been talking to another counselor in a joint town, and he said, yeah, like, I've had to miss meetings because I have small children and my wife works night shifts. So it's something that I think that everyone needs to consider. It's for everyone, and the fact is our children are going to be the next leaders, and we want to set a good example for them, and it starts in the early years.
Yep, absolutely. Maggie, anything else? Give you the last word.
Ooh. I like having the last word. And Jill mentioned, we have to get women in, I'm paraphrasing, but like we have to get women and parents involved and get them there in the first place. And I'll add that I think retention needs to be a bigger focus in Newfoundland and Labrador right now. Different for everybody. If you have a lot of privilege and a lot of support, you're probably going to be able to stick around for as long as you want to. But if your kids are looking at you at the end of the day and saying, "Mommy, please quit this. Don't do it. I don't want you to do it," then something has to give.
Yeah.
And I've heard from people who experience both things. And I've created a network across Canada of young women who are mothers and fathers as well, young men. And we talk regularly, and all of us are struggling with how do we continue to do this work that's so emotionally draining, and our children are not getting what they need from us. So especially in larger metropolitan areas, I hear that from people. And I think we leave people in the lurch once they get elected, and then they're supposed to figure it out. And a lot of the traditional advice doesn't really work because it comes from people who, while they may have been trailblazers in their own day, had a lot of different kinds of support and aren't faced with the millennial gig economy realities of, I had 6 jobs before I went on council. I didn't have one job. I worked, from 8 a.m. until midnight, sometimes 2 a.m. A musician, I was all over the place. So it's we need more support once we're already in there, or else we're going to see the progress that we have completely undone in the next few years, is my prediction. So I think people need to step up now. In Newfoundland and Labrador, we already have the benefit of the Municipalities Act allows for up to 1 year of a leave of absence, for example. And we don't need any legislative changes for people to be allowed to take some time off. But I think councils need to take a bold step and say, this is how we will support you if you come here. This is what we will do for you. If we can't give you money, we will make sure that you can take your kid to a meeting. We'll make sure there's a change table in the bathroom. Like, there's something that every single municipality, no matter how big or how small, could do. And I would like to see, especially the men who are around the table and who are our allies in this the effort to have parity at the municipal tables. I want you to step up and do better.
That's a good note to end on, for sure. Once again, I really want to thank Mayor Chalsie Cook-Marche, Councillor Maggie Burton, and childcare advocate Gillian Pearson for joining us at the M&L virtual conference today to talk about leading mothering and childcare. There's a lot of work left to be done, but I'm hopeful. I think we can do some things, and I think we can make some changes. I want to thank you for joining us. If you have any reflections on this panel or questions, or if you'd just like to reach out to us to talk more about it, please feel free to contact us at our office or email me at dwalsh@municipalnl.ca. Have a very wonderful day and have a great day, ladies.